Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other topics, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
No one has the balls to stand up like I'm doing right now. Stop the crap already. We're all Americans. We're all equal. I don't see black. I don't see Asian. I don't see anything but American. Welcome to One Tough Podcast. We'll do a little summation from last podcast that we had. I think we went through my whole police career and leading up to me being with the Saudi Arabians. And the next thing is we had a big party in La Jolla, California. And then I jumped out of a plane. That was probably the best and greatest break of my life in more ways than one. I broke my leg in half, my ankle in half, bone was sticking out. I come back to New York City, and I'm told, you're not going to be able to come back to the police department. We're not putting you on full duty, which to me was really a blow because all I wanted to be was a homicide detective. I was involved with breaking one of the biggest mass homicides, the Palm Sunday Massacre, and all I wanted to do was be a detective. And they told me they weren't going to allow me back on. So normally when you retire, I had 30 line-of-duty injuries. I could have retired with tax-free money, job-related. I didn't hang around for that. I was so depressed about not being able to be a real detective. I handed my papers in. Cost me at least $1.5 million, maybe $2 million up to date today of tax-free money, which I didn't get. And a lot of people say, well, Bo, why didn't you wait around? Because I didn't want to play a game. When you play the game there, you have to stay out on light duty. You visit the surgeons, and they check your injury. I didn't have time for that. My life was at 100 miles an hour, and I wanted to continue. So I retired, and we all know about me meeting with this guy, Nicholas Pileggi. He was the author of Goodfellas and Casino, and he became one of my best friends. He put me as the feature story in New York Magazine, How New York Lost their Top Detective. Next thing's happening. I'm doing all talk shows. Every corporate heads want me to be the director of security for this, director of security for that. And I for about a month or two, I was in a really deep depression. I was sitting home. It was like a cloud that came over. I didn't know what I was going to do. Next thing is I said, well, I'm going to get my private investigating license, security license. I don't want to work for anybody. I'll open my own shop. At that same time, my congressman, the great Joseph Adabo, he was the head of Defense Appropriation. He ends up dying in office. He was a good friend on my uncle Joe Timpanaro, Tippy, the plumber. And my uncle used to be, he put it this way, he funded him pretty well through the years. I met Congressman Adabo over the years. And he actually was putting me up as a page boy in 1962 or 3 when I was 12 years old, page boy in Washington. And I said to my uncle, I don't want to be no friggin' page boy. I'm a street kid. Well, I'm going to walk around with a little hat in the Capitol? No. So now we have Joe Adabo dies in office. My brother Al says to me, Bo, you could run for Congress. I said, what does a congressman do? Next thing is I meet with the Republican and conservative parties, and there was a couple of state senators that were vying for the Republican nomination. I meet with this guy named Haggerty, and he was the head of the Republican Party from Queens. And I told him why I wanted to run for Congress. My big issues was the crime, the crack, and the corruption. They might sound similar because my friend Rudy Giuliani took my 3 C's from me when he ran for mayor. We had a big crime problem then, like today. The crack was crazy, and the corruption with Manis, it was the 3 C's were there. So now I'm running for Congress, and I'm going at it, and I just started meeting people all over my congressional district. I started doing this. Next thing is I get a phone call from Washington from a guy named Lee Atwater. He was the head of the Republican Party, and he says, Bo, we're following your campaign. We're doing some polling. You got great name recognition. You could win it. I said, wait a second. It's 7-1 Democratic registration. This is going to be an uphill battle, but I'm not afraid of uphill battles. So now I run, And I ended up getting the nomination, the Republican and the Conservative Party's nomination for the 6th Congressional United States Congress. So now I'm running, and I get this call from Lee Atwater, and he goes, President Ronald Reagan will like to see you in Washington next Tuesday or whatever day it was. I said, what? So now I get on a plane, invited my brother Al with me, my daughter Jacqueline. She was only 12. I said, come on, we'll go meet the president. Little did I know I just can't bring people into the White House for lunch. I thought he was inviting me for lunch or whatever. So I get there. Lee Atwater is there and says, no disrespect, your brother and your daughter can't come into the White House. So now I'm in the White House. I'm waiting to come in there. I'll never forget, there was a Senator Barry Goldwater was there with another United States senator. Lee Atwater says, Bo, the president will see you now. And it was supposed to be for a photo op. In other words, get a picture for my campaign literature, and that was going to be it. I walk in there, lights came on. Next thing is, I'll never forget, President Reagan goes, Bo Dietl, a real American hero. My feet were like, I couldn't feel them anymore. Next is he sits me down in the chairs by the fireplace, and he goes, you sit right over here, Bo. He starts going through my life. You were mugged 500 times, Bo. You're this, you're that, and you were a decoy, and you really protected the witnesses. And the president knew all about me. And then he goes, I hear you're going to be doing a movie soon, Bo, and Sylvester Stallone wants to play you. I said, well, Mr. President, you're going to be out of a job soon. Why don't you play me? He starts laughing. I'm a little long in the tooth. Now, to fast forward, he knew all about my life, and they did a lot of background on me. And he says, Bo, I need a guy like you in Congress to take care of some of those guys on the other side of the aisle. I said, Mr. President, if I win as congressman, I'll have your back, and I'll be right in Congress fighting for us and fighting for this country because I'm a fighter. And I stayed there. I think it was all of 12 minutes, but it felt like it was a day. And next thing is I left, and one thing reminded me, if you remember James M. Cohan, when he met, I think it was FDR, when he started dancing down the steps. I started dancing down the steps of the White House. When I went there, my brothers, I told them what happened. Next thing is I go to a fundraiser in New York City. We fly in. I got Senator D'Amato there. Now people realize that I really could win this. Now, the area was 7-1 Democratic registration, but I had enough hype about Bo Dietl. Everything was going on. And I had my office, my campaign office on 101st Avenue in Ozone Park. And everyone knew I grew up with John Gotti. So Richard Gotti comes up to my office. He knocks on the door. He goes, Bo, he goes, Johnny sent me over. Anything you need posters hanging and all that. I said, no, just tell Johnny, please. I love him, but he's got to stay far away from me because that's all they got to pick up, that Bo Dietl running for Congress is best friends, childhood friends with John Gotti. That wouldn't have looked too good politically. And now I run, and again, I really ran to win, and no one could buy me, and I raised a lot of money, and now I go before, and I'll never forget, I go before the different boards, the political boards. New York Post, of course, endorsed me. And then I go, and I don't go, but it was a guy named Starr from the New York Times editorial board. He says that he called me up. This guy never called me up. So what happens is they run an editorial that they're endorsing Floyd Flake, the Democrat, over me. And now I said, Max Frankel, that was his name, the editor of the New York Times. I call up Max Frankel. I said, Mr. Frankel, with all due respect to the New York Times, no one asked to interview me. No one knows why I'm running for Congress. I think you guys should have given me the opportunity to listen to me. He goes, well, Starr, the guy named Starr, told me he called you and you didn't return his call. I said, you tell Mr. Starr that he's full of shit, because if he called me, I would have gone there. So he goes, do you want to come in tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I said, I'll be there. So I go to my Sergeant Campbell, and he's my ex-sergeant, detective sergeant, and we're sitting in the editorial board with Max Frankel's there and the editorial board. Next thing is I come out with a tape recorder, big tape recorder, and I put it on, and I go like this. This is so I don't get misquoted. For about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I get interviewed by the editorial board, and I tell them about being stabbed, shot up, being a decoy, caring about the kids and caring about all the people of my area and caring about the people of America and why I'm running. The next day, they actually did an editorial where they apologized to me. They spelled my name wrong. They apologized for spelling my name wrong, and they said that I would make a most formidable United States congressman, although we're not going to change our endorsement from the Reverend Floyd Flake. But you don't get the New York Times to apologize to too many people. And I got to have a lot of respect for Mr. Max Frankel. He gave me the opportunity to know what I was running about. So I end up running, and again, I went to South Jamaica, all the black neighborhoods. I didn't care. I was a cop in every black neighborhood. I was the servant to the black community all the time. I was on the police department, so nobody can run that crap about black, white. I saw black on black crime. I picked up a lot of dead children. My last case was 10 dead, including 8 children dead. So when people talk about black and white, I don't see black and white. I see Americans, and I was the servant again to the black community. So I'd go to St. Albans, Cambria Heights, South Jamaica, and Floyd Flake, the Reverend Floyd Flake, says to me, "You know what, Bo? You got some balls to come over here." I says, "Come on, Reverend. I'm not playing a game here. I'm running to win, and that's it." So we go. I end up, it's election day, and the polls have me edging Floyd Flake out. Next thing is this guy, Brian McCabe, becomes a candidate. He's from Rockaway. So he ends up running, and 4,000 votes from Rockaway, which is all white. That was going to be my votes. And the next thing would happen is he pulls 4,000 votes. I think I lost by 2,500 votes, and I'm in Howard Beach, and I'm at Joe DeCandia's place, Tony Roma. And the next thing is Brian's there, and I said to Brian McCabe, I said, "Listen, you did a good run. We lost. We'll support our Congressman Floyd Flake," and that's it. He goes, the wife comes over and says, "Oh, no, we didn't lose." The next day it was announced that Brian McCabe became the chief of staff for Floyd Flake. So he was sent in there for one reason, to take me out. Welcome to politics, Bo Dietl. And now, I learned from politics at that time, and I learned again when I run for mayor, which is going to be later on in my career. So now after I lose, but I didn't lose completely, because I met this guy named George Bush, who was the vice president, and we became friends. His daughter, Doro Bush, became my friend. I brought her up to Rayo's, and the father then brings me on board his campaign for the presidency, and I was the law and order supporter of him. Next thing that happens is he wins, and he calls me to the Oval Office again. I was in the Oval Office between Ronald Reagan and George Bush a few times, and he goes, "Bo, you helped me with the campaign. What do you want?" I said, "You know what I'd like? I'd like to be like the head of the Drug Commission, to give these grants to police departments all over the United States. I'd love to help cops and be part of it." He goes, "Fine." Next thing is federal judge Reggie Walton contacts me, an African-American federal judge, calls me to Washington. I meet with him. He goes, "We're going to do a round robin on you, Bo." I said, "That's fine." Next thing is I get a call from federal judge Reggie Walton. He goes, "Bo, you got a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" "John Gotti." I said, "Well, everyone knows I know John Gotti." Now, one of my best friends at that time was a guy named Jim Fox. He's the assistant director of the FBI New York office. We became very, very friendly. Him, Ray Kelly, we used to hang out. We used to go to dinner together. Ray Kelly, the police commissioner, became the head of the customs, the head of all these federal agencies. So now he tells me that now we're being interviewed by the federal judge, and he goes, "You got a problem." I have dinner with Jim Fox, the assistant director of the FBI. I said, "Jim, I got a problem." I said, "This thing's popping up about my relationship with John Gotti. You know the story." He goes, "Bo, I've investigated. I have dinner with you. I've done round robins, investigated you thoroughly about any involvement with organized crime. You know what? You know every organized crime member. You have no involvement whatsoever." He ends up writing a letter to the President of the United States, George Bush. I've been in the FBI for over 30 years. I'll put my reputation on Bo Dietl. And the next thing is I says, "Wow, this is great." The judge says, "This is fine, Bo." I said, "Do I got the job?" He goes, "No, there's something else. Senate confirmation." Senate confirmation. I didn't know what it was. So I said, Senate confirmation. So next thing is I learned that they're going to put your name out there. And there's a lot of jealous people when I retired from the police department. And to say the least, people that don't like you will be sending all kinds of negatives. And I had my families, my children, and I didn't want to get dragged through the coals. So I go to see the president. I said, Mr. President, I really don't want that job. Do you have a job for me like where I don't have to go through Senate confirmation? He goes, I'll make you the chairman of the Crime Commission. So President Bush appointed me as the chairman of the Crime Commission in 1989. And I still to this day don't know what the hell it was, but I was the chairman of the Crime Commission. And, I started understanding about politics then. So then my career just kept on going. I had a very good accessibility with the president, George Bush also, again in the Oval Office. And next thing that happens is I started doing investigations. I started doing murder investigations. Barbara Mangiamelli, one of the greatest investigations we did where these two creeps killed this gemologist. Then I mentioned about Darrell King. He was a black fella that was arrested for killing a cop back in 1970. We did that investigation. We were able to prove that he didn't kill the cop and get him out of jail. I'm just throwing these investigations around. We rescued a kid out of Istanbul, Turkey, who was kidnapped there. Rescued another kid out of Denmark. And it just kept going on. Then I get a call, the Carpenters Union.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Bo, what would it take over the New York City Carpenters Union? I said, it's going to take you a lot of money. I meet with Doug McCarran, who was the head of the Carpenters Union in Washington, and I brought on 100 armed guys. We ended up taking over the whole Carpenters Union security. I ended up taking the president, vice president, taking them all out and controlling them. We took like a receivership of them, and we did that. Then we had the big pharmaceutical company investigation. I'm bouncing around a little bit because I can sit here for years and talk about the cases because you remember, I've been in private investigating for over 37 years. But the other good one was the big pharma contacts me. That's the pharmaceutical companies. They call us to Washington, me and Mike Siravola. We sit there in this big conference room. You have a head of a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, a lawyer, because the antitrust, they can't sit together. So they tell us that they are now trying to get this drug bill passed. I think it was 2003. So they go, we hired another company called Global Options, but they did a good investigation, but no one knew about it. They go, Bo, do you think you could do the investigation and get it out there? I said, we can do. So next thing is we started buying drugs on the internet, and we started to analyze these drugs that we're buying. We also went to these websites, these dark-shaded websites that no one knew who they were. So we started the investigation, which we bought drugs, we brought them into the office, we analyzed. Next thing that happens is the investigation took us to Kashmir, Pakistan, where they were making these drugs, and they were knocking off the labels and all that. Some of these drugs actually were yellow road paint that people were taking online. And now we're finding out that these drugs, some of them were for insulin, none of them were refrigerated. People injecting insulin that wasn't insulin. They could have died from it. So then we go and we decide to, that they call me back to Washington. They said, we'd like you to become a lobbyist for Big Pharma. So I become a lobbyist along with Mike Siravola. And now I have to interview and I have to decide and tell what happened with our investigation to 40 United States senators. At this time, I was doing IMUS in the morning, so everyone in Washington knew who Bo Dietl was. Every senator I requested to have a meeting with, every one of them took my meeting, and we were able to show the dangers of the drugs being imported. Now, mysteriously, I get a call from the head of the DEA. I think her name was Tandy at that time. She sends a letter, and she sends the DA to my office with a subpoena to hand over all the drugs that you got on the internet and find out as far as all my information. Next thing is they said to me, Bo, can you get it out? So I called my friend Tom Brokaw. That was NBC Nightly News. So I tell Tom about the investigation. I said, tell you what, Tom, I got my daughter Dana, my son Bo. I'm going to have them in my house order drugs online. So we're in my house on Long Island with my two kids, with Dana and Bo. I think Dana was 7, Bo was 5 at the time. Next thing is their dog Charlie was there, and Tom Brokaw was sitting there. So I said, order some OxyContin or some Vicodin, order some good drugs. So my daughter's there, spell it, Daddy, and now she's ordering drugs for her, for my little son Bo. I said, order some for Charlie the dog. She put Charlie the dog. She ordered some Vicodin for Charlie the dog. Next thing, 2-3 days later, it comes in the mail. We open it up, and sure enough, the drugs are in the mail. And Tom Brokaw's again. So this hits national news about the dangers online of buying drugs. Next thing is, like I said, we get a subpoena from the head of the DEA. I turn my drugs over. We go back and forth. And the point I'm trying to get is they tried to take me out, and I handed over all my drugs. We were very successful. I lobbied 40 United States senators. The drug bill was passed in 2003. I think that we helped a lot with it. But the point I'm trying to bring out is the interaction I had with all these United States senators, who I was through Imus in the morning, through being on his show 2-3 times a week. I was able to get it out there. Then at the same time we're doing this, we're handling all kinds of major cases, corporate investigations, due diligence all over the country, all over the world, and we went on, and the investigations continue, and then I went into the real estate business with Steve Witkoff, and I became a partner with him back probably in 1990. I became a partner, he said, and we started buying buildings. I became an owner of the Woolworth building, along with about 10 other properties, and it was all over the place. And I was making really good money. I opened up a fish oil vitamin company. I was doing about $8 million a year. Things were great. And I was spending money, and I was making a lot of money. And the next thing is that I was gambling too, which I'm not proud of. And private jets, going on trips with my brothers to Alaska with my kids, and 7-8 days in Alaska, private jet all around. Private jets down the the Colorado River, Grand Canyons, everywhere, going over to Europe. My friend would give me his yacht. I'd have my kids on the yacht. I lived the life that people can dream about. My memories, the only problem I had was I was a little foolish about saving money. I thought it would never end, and this could be a lesson to people listening out there. When you're doing real well and you're doing real good financially, save for tomorrow. Because tomorrow is going to come, and you'll want to have that nest egg. And when I look back today, and I see the difference of, as far as financially, how much money that I had, and how much I actually was involved with Danny Del Giorno in 1999. We sold a company called Softworks for $200 million. I mean, these numbers are real, and I would not think of going to a clothing store, shirts, Ascot Chang, $500 shirts, $5,000 suits. I just loved the best parts of life, and I really excelled in spending money. I was very good to the economy of New York and to America. I spent a damn lot of money. Best restaurants all over the city. Every restaurant owner wanted me to be a customer, and I was a customer out at many nights of the week. And the bad part about it is I didn't spend enough of time with my children. I have 2 sets of children. I have Richard and Jacqueline, and that was when I was a policeman, and then I retired. And then I have Dana and Bo, and I really worked a lot day and night, but I was playing hard, and I look back on my life, or I reflect back in my life, and I wasn't the greatest father, and that's one of the things I'm kind of sorry about, that I should have devoted more time to my children and been there for them through these. I used to try to make as many soccer games and many sporting events that I could. And then I would take them on these extravagant trips all over the world, wherever I would take them. That doesn't make it up for being home, having dinner with them at night, and talking to them and getting in their heads. That was what I was absolutely wrong. And if you look at your whole life overall and you weigh your life out and say, where did I go wrong? I think I was absentee father for all 4 of my children. That's one of my downfalls, which I regret. Now we fast forward and we go into the teens. And of course, we all went through 2008, the real estate crisis. And at that time, I ended up losing all my real estate investments with Steve Wickoff. He didn't play me right. And to this day, I feel as though I was not played right by Steve Wickoff, who I was his partner. Everyone in New York knew that. I raised hundreds of $millions through Lehman Brothers, Hypo Bank. These were contacts. And we'd close deals at Rayo's restaurant. We'd buy this, buy that. And at the same time we're doing this, let's go to 1989. After I was appointed as the chairman of the Crime Commission, and I had met Nick Pileggi in 85. Next, Nick calls me and says, we're going to do this movie, and it's about my book, Wise Guy. It's going to be called Goodfellas. So we're up in Rayo's, and the next thing is Martin Scorsese's with me, Ellen Lewis, the cast director, Nick Pileggi, Ray Liotta, Lorraine Bracco. We're in Rayo's, but Rayo's was a little different then in 1989. We had characters from the neighborhood. P.D. Neck, his neck was stuck. Johnny Roast Beef, he owned the deli. Mikey Black, dark complexion. Frankie Nose, his nose was out like this. So Martin Scorsese sees these characters at the bar, and he goes, Bo, could we come back next week? Anybody wants to be in Goodfellas, tell them to show up. We came back the next Thursday, that's my Thursday night, and we end up casting no less than 15, including Frankie, my dear friend Frankie Pellegrino. He's in Goodfellas. And we cast everybody out of Rayo's. And in Goodfellas, you see the bar scenes in Goodfellas. These are characters that we cast. You had the fellow from the Copacabana, Palmini, and the other fellow, Tony Lip. He was casted also. And I tell you what, it was fantastic. Then I got close to Martin Scorsese, and I was fortunate to be put into 5 of his different projects, including The Wolf of Wall Street. This is going on at the same time, Wolf of Wall Street. I get a call from Dick Grasso from the New York Stock Exchange. Bo, I got this guy, Stratton Oakmont. His name's Jordan Belfort. He's being shaken down by some wise guys out on Long Island. He needs help. Go out and see him. I go out and see him. He tells me that these, whatever his name, Nunzio, Tony No Head, whatever the hell their names were, gave him the cards. I said, well, here's my card. When they come back, you tell them I'm your partner. And next thing is I'm bodyguarding him. Jordan Belfort, a little creep. He's always stoned on Quaaludes. And next thing is, about The Wolf of Wall Street, the movie. It depicts him really, really well. He was a Quaalude junkie. That's what he was. He never did too many good things for charities. I'll never forget it. I never could get him to give money. And then he ripped off people about $200 million. And that whole picture then becomes a movie with Scorsese. And the next thing is, Scorsese calls me and he goes, we got this part for Bo Dietl. You're throughout the book. He goes, who are we going to get to play it? I said, who are you going to get to play it? I'm playing myself, and the rest is history. And we actually filmed. Frankie gave us permission. We filmed in Rayo's the scene with Leonardo DiCaprio and me sitting in the back when I say to Leo, stop taking those effing Quaaludes. The last time you fell asleep in your macaroni and he's popping Quaaludes. True story. The real Jordan Belfort fell asleep in the macaroni. I picked his head up, wiped him off. I told one of my guys, get him in the car, get him the hell out of here. He's a friggin' embarrassment. And today, he's doing podcasts. He's like the most famous guy in the world, private jets. So, excuse me. So when you tell me crime doesn't pay, I don't know. And I think he paid back $11 million. I wonder where the other $180-something million are, but that's a good question. So then that happens, and then with the movie industry, we do a thing called Vinyl with Martin Scorsese, and then we all know that probably the greatest movie part I had, Marty Calls Me Again, and I get a great part with these 2 B-list actors. Only kidding. The great Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in the movie called The Irishman was one of my greatest roles, because working with these 2 great actors just was the epitome of acting. And I've been in I think 85 to 100 different TV shows and movies. But that, to me, The Irishman was the coup de grace. And to be with these great actors was wonderful. You know, this time now we're going to wind down here. I hope I gave the audience a little bit of color. There's so much in. I could be here for months talking about them. In the weeks to come, we're going to talk about some really interesting subjects. But the most important thing you got to realize is from leaving the police department, I didn't quit. My life just began then. And I networked beyond anything. I was with chairmans, with Jack Welch, major chairmans, Ken Langone, Dick Fold, Warren Buffett, Radar Head, what's his name, the guy from Microsoft, Bill Gates, all of them. I would have up to Rayo's, my Thursday night table. I used to think that it was me, when it turns out to be my Rayo's table. My Rayo's table is the reason that all these people wanted to be my friends. They had accessibility to the greatest table of any restaurant in the world every Thursday night. And I really believe without Rayo's table, I wouldn't be the Bo Dietl that I am today. And that's a subject that we spoke about on another podcast. But I go look it up, Rayo's table, and you'll understand what it's all about. And again, I hope I didn't bore anybody, but this is Bo's life. This is the second part of 2. And then next week we'll have a really exciting topic. And I want to thank everybody for tuning into the podcast. This is not no fluff piece. This is really the good, the bad, and the ugly of Bo Dietl's life. And I made a lot of money. I spent a lot of money. I wasn't the greatest father or husband in the world, but I do love my children. I actually love all my ex-wives, and I love my Margot more than anything in the world. She is now the most important lady in my life, and I'm very happy with my life right now. Because to be in love is to be in life. God bless everybody, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.